Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's doing sort of a request this video. I'm going to be reviewing the album To Alive. That's Alive and the E has two umlauts over it. I hate to say I don't think there's any proper way to pronounce an E with an umlaut over it, at least not that I can figure out. But it's by the artist Yeat. And this is kind of a request because my son wanted me to review it, and my son's sort of group of friends are happy when I review albums that they're interested in. I don't think they watch the whole thing, but I think they're happy to know that, someone's taking their music seriously, and I don't know, maybe it's funny to make fun of my son for that. But I was happy to review this. The word yeet is one of my favorite words that young people use these days. Very early on in the channel history, I received in the mail a t-shirt that just said Yeat on it. And I still to this day don't know who sent it to me. It's one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me. But when I heard Yeat, my issue was, how do I say something about it? It appeared somewhat generic to me, somewhat cookie cutter of this sort of rage trap moment in hip hop, popularized and innovated by Playboi Carti, sort of melodic, experimental, very similar to the album Whole Lot of Red, but maybe not quite as brilliant. And I had a hard time figuring out what's going to be my angle. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it all the way through. I liked listening to it. I didn't think it was trash. I didn't think it was garbage. But I had a hard time figuring out what to say about Yeat. Sorry, that's my chair's making all that noise. I'll stop moving around. And so I was driving my son to a doctor's appointment yesterday, and I asked him, just thinking maybe if I keep poking around, I'll get an angle. I said, well, what do your friends like about Yeat? And he just goes, I don't know. It's kind of easy to listen to. Really? The lyrics don't really matter. The music doesn't really matter. It's just, you can just sort of listen to it. And that was my in. That was my way of understanding not only this album, but this genre and a lot of this music that old people like myself dismiss as being, atmospheric, but vaguely violent and sexual and promoting when you think about the thematics of this album, owning cars and money and women and doing lots of drugs and the sort of vague threats that's kind of all throughout, this whole kind of the way we think about it is the dirtiest and darkest you can possibly have with hip hop. Yet for the listener, for many listeners, it fulfills the same role as that nebulous genre, which still exists but was most popular in the 1960s and 70s, easy listening. You see, easy listening was an entire radio format comprised of a lot of instrumental songs, instrumental versions of popular songs, otherwise known as muzak, MOR music, middle of the road music, just sort of simple, light pop music, music that you could put on in an office building, or songs you could put on at a mall, and no one would get upset. Everyone would just be listening to their Perry Como or their Herb Alpert and just be sort of happy and just sort of not thinking about anything. Easy listening. So that's what I think Yeat is able to do for his audience. Even though he's singing about all these ridiculous things and all this drugs and sex and all these things which are supposed to upset me, in a way, it made me feel closer to my son's generation and closer to Yeat when I understood this. The things that seem repetitive and maybe annoying, repeating the same words over and over again, the sort of same farting bass lines every song. Next song. Next song. Just song after song, super minimalist, very little development. What my son says is also quite salient is usually there's at least one part of each song that everybody knows. Everyone can just sort of say something, one line from a song that's repeated. And so I realized it has this sort of soothing effect. And when I understood that, and I looked at this crazy track list of 20 songs, definite Drake track list bloat syndrome, definitely it's too long and it's too repetitive. But then when I understood that it was that, it's stressful being a young person. Yeah, you have to do work and you have all these expectations. You don't know what the future is going to bring. You just need to just zone out to some lounge music, some nice, easy listening. Easy listening for the twizzies. That's what this is. And another thing that I was realizing, I went down to New York to see Billie Eilish with my kids, and every time I drive to New York, about 100 miles outside of New York, you can start to get Hot 97, which is the most important radio station ever. It's the radio station that helped popularize a lot of trends in hip hop, and I always listen to it, so I know like what's happening in mainstream hip hop. And I gotta say, I would have killed for some Yeat. Everything on this channel, the entire time I was listening, was just this mid-tempo, slightly raunchy sex music. The only thing that even approximated hip-hop was a Nicki Minaj song. I didn't even hear Drake. It used to be when you drive through New York and listen to Hot 97, all you'd hear is Drake. But everything was just back it up and put it down and put it down and back it up on every single damn song. And where's the hip-hop? They play like one Kanye song. That song, the song I like the least off of Donda, with the sample from Lauryn Hill. Like that was the closest they would get to hip hop. And so what I'm hoping is that this kind of music, this rage trap, it's so funny, right? I'm calling rage trap easy listening, but I think it is. My hope is that this kind of music takes more of a foothold, so we at least have like some hip hop on Hot 97. My initial take on this was going to be to compare it to that Skeet Davidson sketch on Saturday Night Live with the white rappers just saying skirt, skirt all the time. At times it feels like, I wonder if this isn't almost a parody of itself at times, because it's so much that same sound and that same feeling, but I don't think it is. The history behind this artist is a little bit interesting. So I guess he's from Portland, Oregon, which makes him and Amine the only two people that I know from Portland, Oregon. And he's of Mexican and Romanian descent, which is a pretty interesting assemblage. Romanian history is quite interesting and filled with tragedy. So there is an interesting sort of like multiculturalism in his background that, as far as I can tell, makes no appearance whatsoever on the album. There's lots of artists of European descent, lots of artists of Mexican descent, but just absolutely nothing. Just nothing. Nothing about his culture, nothing about his upbringing, just racks on racks, racks on racks, big boy toys and Tonkas. So to that end, let's talk about The Stamp, an example song of the album. There's so many songs on this album. I'm not going to go into detail in many of them because basically it's just one song. It's just the same thing being said. I sound like I'm criticizing, but I'm not. It works for helping to ease the stress of modern life for young people who just want to tune out, scroll on their Instagram and they're ticking and they're talking, and they're Snapchatting. They just want to just zone out, relax, and listen to this over and over and over again. It doesn't sound like I like it, but I do. So my Stamp, my example song on the album, is going to be Still Countin'. I'll include a link to it up there. It seems like it couldn't possibly be easy listening with this aggravating beat, this kind of a grindy synthesizer with this bloopy bleepy bit over it. Vocoders at the end of every line going, kind of like robotic chickens, And the lyrics, I'm on the X tonight, I'm on the perk tonight. So much about being on ecstasy, being on Percocet, so much about doing drugs. F a crib, I'm about to hop on a jet and just live in the sky. Yeah, I just be calling my demons. I do what they say, don't know why. This great theme that's just so prevalent in so much of this style of hip-hop, of just talking incessantly about abusing prescription drugs, but not enjoying it. We're in a weird place right now where it seems that in order for rap artists to be authentic, they have to have crippling addiction issues, and they have to be sad about it. They have to be sort of mezzo-mezzo. I don't get the sense that the Percocets that this person keeps on talking about are bringing him any joy whatsoever, except for the joy that comes from the weird sense of authenticity that comes from being on Percocets. Rax came in, I was still in the Tonka. Racks came in, they can't fit in this Tonka. I suppose he's referring to a Lamborghini SUV that he calls a Tonka truck. There's a whole infantile theme throughout this album where he's constantly talking about himself as being a big boy and having big boy trucks and having big boy stacks and big boy claps and big boy whaps and big boy all that, right? It's weird. It's a little bit weird because it feels like he's maybe doubting himself. Luck crank, luck crank, luck crank, luck crank, luck crank, luck crank. It is relaxing. I don't know what luck crank means. I don't. I didn't look it up on Lyric Genius. You can tell me in the comments after you smash the like bucket and subscribe. But that's also part of why I picked this as an example, because these are the typical lyrics where he'll just sort of throw in his own slang, throw in general slang, repeat himself, talk about money, talk about luxury, talk about these drugs. Yeah, some of my twizzies, real deal crazy, they'll get you whacked. I ain't trying to hear your music, turn it off. That ish, some trash. I suppose twizzies is... Jesus, I hope twizzies doesn't mean something bad. Do I get a pass? If twizzies is like some kind of weird racial thing, please give me a pass. Once again, I do not speak for my institution or where I work. I'm an individual. I don't know what twizzies means. I couldn't figure out what it means, but he refers to a lot of people as twizzies and as crazy. And I can't tell on the album if it's like good or bad. And I'm sort of intentionally playing up my obliviousness here because, obviously I could have looked it up. But I think it's more funny for me not to know, because I think that's the other part of it. That people get to listen to this music that's so meditative and trance-like and so relaxing, while also knowing that old people like me will just listen there and go, "What's a twizzy? What's a look crank? Do you twizzy a look crank?" There's now been a couple of times that people have taken like little quotes from my channel and turned it into music. If someone wanted to make, just saying, if someone wanted to make a beat in the style of Yeat to what I just said, what's a twizzy and what's a look crank, I think that would sound good. But really, what makes him interesting is that he's not actually a very boring rapper, even though the way that he raps sounds a lot like other people at different times. He manages to change up his flow a lot. Like he like yells and whines and sings and talks all on the song. So it's a subtle thing. It really is, to pick it up. It would be easy to listen to this entire album, not focus on it at once, and say it's just one song with one voice. But if you pay a little bit more attention, there is a fair amount of artistry to what he's doing. So I'm going to go through the rest of the album much quicker. Poppin'. It's the first song. It's the contradictions of Yeat that I like so much, because the song's really sweet, even though he's talking about trust issues and needing drugs. There's like harsh words and a sweet voice, which is even more on the second song, Outside with Young Thug, Outside with Young Thug, which is almost like Katy Perry keyboards. And like it's just this beautiful pop song with these bells, and Young Thug is also just very sweet. Like, could please, Hot 97, could you please put this on the radio? Could this be the next thing? I want to hear Outside, Young Thug, and Yeat all over the place. Next time I'm at Wegmans and I'm buying cereal, I want to hear this. I think it has everything that you need to be a pop song in today's era. It's still materialist and druggy and all that stuff, but it's also just very poppy and very effective. It is funny because I can't tell if he's talking about cologne or Frida Kahlo. There's one line where he either says it feels like cologne or Frida Kahlo, in which case Frida Kahlo, the great Mexican artist, maybe he is referring to his culture. I don't know. I've never heard any rappers talk about Frida Kahlo. Basquiat, Warhol, Picasso, they all get a lot of mentions. Why isn't Frida Kahlo up there? She's pretty important. Next song is called Real 6. This is probably the worst song on the album. I just don't like this one. It's like a 2-note bass fart as opposed to a 3-note. He's overly emphatic in his lyrics and just horny lick on me. I just don't like it. But this is the thing about not liking a song. It counteracts the narrative that it's all the same. Like, you listen to the song Outside, and then you listen to the song Real 6, and it's so clear how good Real 6 is. Next song, Nerver again. Very dirty sound. This was so much better than Mule 6. Kind of 3 notes. It almost sounds like it starts halfway through. It seems to be about how drugs don't work anymore. And there's really like a lot of neat production at the end throughout this album. Here, like it's sort of like it plays out. And this is kind of like this tinkling sound, which is counteracting the farting synthesizers. Quite often at the end of songs, if you pay attention, something interesting is happening. Next song, La Geek. A little bit more menacing, nice kind of 808 bass drum. This is the most big boy song. He talks about his big boy trucks, his big boy stuff, his big boy pull-ups. Jeez, has anyone done that yet? So pull-ups are diapers for like kids who are like not babies anymore, for toddlers. It's actually not a good idea to use them because it just sort of trains kids to just pee standing up. But it's useful for some kids. But their slogan was, I'm a big boy now. You know, like pull-ups. Like pull up in my Lambo truck. Pull up like a diaper. I know that sounds like a bad idea, but it's actually going to fit into this album. You just wait. There's a fair amount of bodily fluid rap on this album. I like how he talks about how he never brushes his teeth because they're diamonds. There's something about that that's really sad and perfect. You know, like there's a sort of emptiness and a kind of a desperation here. And just not brushing your teeth because they got diamonds on them. Rack's Got Me, more of a rapid flow, very different from the other songs. I really like how there's like a keyboard echo that rises in the verse with him. Again, you really just need to pay attention to the variations that happen in this. They're slight, but they're meaningful. Very, very, very sad theme. Perks don't stab my back, stacks don't stab my back. It's just, I mean, if we told rappers you can't talk about people stabbing you in the back anymore, I think it would be harder for rappers to stop talking about fake friends than it would be for them to stop talking about drugs, money, and guns. I'm just putting that out there. And this is where Gunna makes an appearance and says, I'm going to make them bleed like tampons. So I told you my diaper line isn't really that far away. I just, in general, hey, you know, like sanitary products of any kind, I think should just stay off the menu. That's just, but hey, it depends. I didn't write that joke. I improvised it. Did you just unlike the video? Did you just unsubscribe? I don't blame you. Doubles, the next song, cool kind of twinkling sound, and there's a totally blown out bass, just blown out, which is quite nice. On the Line, another 2 notes. This time he actually does the wah sound, the kind of Playboi Carti wah sound. I don't know, you know, it's just like my notes were, it's not a song, it's just notes and speaking. But I do like his low voice here, just better. Like this is one where I wasn't paying attention and I wondered if it was the exact same song as the previous one. But it's a little bit more tweaked with some auto-tune on there and the addition of bells. Every once in a while there's bells on here. According to my son, bells are one of his trademarks. But he doesn't actually use it that much considering how many songs there are here. Jump has a little bit of a departure as well. These arpeggiated synthesizers, just saying jump, jump, jump. Don't Lie is the next song. Actually really quite different, just very, very layered. And then he's using basically a triplet flow, which he doesn't use elsewhere on the album very often. Again, if you're not paying attention, you're not really seeing how much Yeat is doing. Rollin' is kind of a singy song, more disassociated sounds, talking about Molly and blabbering and everything I do be going viral. That's, you know, an interesting side effect of the state that we're in right now with hip-hop, with the importance of being viral in order to have success. Me and my Twitter, insane. One of my favorite songs is Taliban. I just walked in with the Taliban. You know, when my son was talking about what this album can do, I think that's an example, right? Because like if I were a teenager and I knew that we all listened to this, I would totally just walk into a room and just be like, I just walked in with the Taliban. Like that would be my kind of joke. Because like what the hell is he talking about? What does he mean by Taliban? Like what does that mean? Like seriously, tell me in the comments, why is he walking in with the Taliban? Like is it like in reference to like the heroin trade for the Taliban? Is it in reference to like revolutionary fighters? Is he a jihadi? Like what? I just walked in with the Taliban, but that's that kind of thing where I could see being a young person listening to the album for its sort of therapeutic feeling. It's easy listening, and then having those little notes. Narcotics, more drug talk. Talks about getting schmacked. There's that weird kind of accent he'll throw on there. I think also probably, I mean, I don't know, because when I was growing up, hip hop was only talking about, I mean, really, it was only talking about getting drunk and smoking weed. It was a little bit about cocaine, but I legitimately didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that an 8-ball referred to cocaine. I thought it was a kind of malt liquor. Before Genius, you just don't know. Eazy-E said that it was freezing his balls at one point. So, like, I figured it was just like a cold bottle of malt liquor that was called 8-ball. Looking back at it, it totally makes sense, you know. But in general, it was a very small window. The abuse of opiates, which is just so prevalent here, I think maybe part of what this music does is kind of like what psychedelic music can do. That, you know, if you don't do drugs, and I don't do drugs, I like psychedelic music. I can like relate to the feeling that it has. I can get a little bit of that disassociated feeling that people get when I listen to psychedelic music. I don't need to drop acid to enjoy the psychedelic effects of psychedelic music. I get to keep all my brain and have that effect. I think to an extent, you know, ever since, you know, Future and everyone revolutionized the way that we listen to kind of drowsy music, maybe there's kind of a positive side to it, where like young people can have the effects of being addicted to terrible painkillers and opiates without having to do them. Because like whatever kind of like sleepy, I mean, is it really going to get better than just getting into that zone by listening to songs like this? Is it going to be better if you have a crippling addiction that you have to like work super hard to maintain and then ultimately lose your life to? So, you know, maybe there's a therapeutic nature too, a sort of a non-drug user's guide to being a druggie. Call Me is a love song, super weird. I'm going to take a break from perks so you can have all of me. Just quick word of relationship advice. If anyone ever says that they will stop doing drugs in order to be with you, run. Because that is a limited time offer. Like maybe once or twice. Yeat, you're not relationship material. Can't Die is actually spelled K-A-N-T, so it's an entire song about sort of dialectics and the critique of pure reason by Immanuel Kant. I don't know if I really agree with it from a sort of ontological perspective, but I find it, you know, I think it's solid. Sorry, that's another joke. That makes me happy. It depends. I like the kind of plodding keyboards on Can't Die. I like the way he has a chorus with himself. Geek High has a cool trick that he does quite a few times where he takes the drums and makes them backwards at the end. The last song is The Stamp Still Countin', and then the second to last song is the best song on the album, and it's not even close. Smooktober is like the best song. And this is what's crazy. This is the one song produced by Filthy, who's the guy who produced most of Whole Lotta Red. How the hell is this guy who makes the same kind of ominous, farty synthesizer, write it in 5-minute beats so much better than the rest of the album? I can't figure it out. But I didn't know. I listened to the whole album. I didn't know this was the guy who did Whole Lotta Red. But it is noticeably better. It is remarkably better. And anytime you can say that, that means that there's a level of complexity which you might miss if you just fold your arms and say, they're just mumbling about codeine. Just great. I just love that beat. Definitely the best song on the album. And it just reminds me that all of this stuff is great, but I have a limited time to listen to music, you know, because I do this channel. So I think I'm set with Whole Lotta Red. Like, I think whatever Whole Lotta Red does, it does it better than this. But Whole Lotta Red is a little bit more engaging, and it doesn't give you that trance-like feeling. So please leave a comment. What did you think of Yeat? What do you think of my easy listening hypothesis? Easy listening for Zoomers? Okay, there's the camera.